green bean. Shoot that bitch like I play 2K. Introduce her to the dream team. Then make her moving on blue right. I did not hear what you did. I did not hear what you say. Girl, say what you want. Girl, say what you want.
Miss Elizabeth presided over the WWF.
It's not the Dark Side of the Ring video. It's another one. Let's watch this one.
As the first lady of wrestling. Her elegant aesthetic and classic love story with the Macho Man Randy Savage made her one of the most popular women in all of wrestling. But in 2003, Miss Elizabeth was found passed away in the home of her new lover, Lex Luger, and questions have swirled ever since as to the nature of her death, especially since they were both drug addicts, and 1 month before her death, Lex Luger was arrested for giving Miss Elizabeth 2 black eyes and a busted lip. This is where the conspiracy theory that Lex Luger murdered Miss Elizabeth comes from. But could this conspiracy theory actually be true?
Yes.
Miss Elizabeth, real name Elizabeth Hewlett, was born in Frankfort, Kentucky, and from a young age, she had a tough upbringing. Her father left the family when she was young, and as a result, her family grew up very poor. Despite her circumstances, she was able to rise above them, graduating from the University of Kentucky with a degree in communications. While working the front desk of a gym in Kentucky in the early 1980s, Elizabeth met Randy Poffo, better known as the Macho Man Randy Savage. Savage claims that it was love at first sight, though Elizabeth's friends say that she needed a little more time to become accustomed to the high-energy Savage. Regardless, the two quickly entered into a romantic relationship with each other and would marry at Elizabeth's mother's house in Frankfort, Kentucky in 1984. At the time, Savage was part of International Championship Wrestling, and from time to time he began to get involved with Miss Elizabeth. She was helping him out in the company. Elizabeth was primarily an announcer for ICW, but also served as an editor for their televised shows. Officials at ICW were impressed at how quickly Elizabeth picked up the industry, so she became a staple of the program. In 1985, Vince McMahon was combing the territories to bring in all of their best talent, and decided to bring the Macho Man Randy Savage into the WWF. Savage, though, insisted that his wife had to be on the road with him, so WWF officials quickly tried to find a spot for Miss Elizabeth. Randy Savage then introduced his new manager, the elegant and beautiful Miss Elizabeth. Her beauty immediately caught the attention of the audience, but the audience weren't the only ones to fall in love with Miss Elizabeth. WWF officials were immediately impressed by her too, particularly how her graceful presence was the polar opposite to the Macho Man's intensity. This helped to humanize the wild persona that was Randy Savage to the audience. This juxtaposition was further highlighted by the fact that Elizabeth was truly one of the first female valets in the company. Despite Savage being a heel throughout his initial run, Elizabeth always continued to be a face. This enabled Savage to continue to garner heat with the fans, as he would treat the beautiful Miss Elizabeth poorly on camera to get the—
Yo, hey, I seen that Fabulous Moolah. Actually, that might be a great video to watch. Oh, and she prostitute. What the I didn't know that side. But I knew Fabulous Moolah, her mother sick ass, kept that women's title for all those years. And she wouldn't give it up. How you gonna hold a belt for 30 years, you sick freakazoid?
Audience to boo him.
She was a pimp, though? She was a pimp? Fabulous more like that?
Savage's early stories also revolved around other men being Elizabeth, including George the Animal Steel and the $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase. In all of these rivalries, Savage would be enraged by anyone else trying to lay their hands on his woman. This was actually very reflective of Savage and Elizabeth's relationship in real life. Especially in the late 1980s, the wrestlers in the locker room were known for their constant and extreme pranks, and were also known for their womanizing. In order to protect Elizabeth from the boys, and in order to satiate his own jealousy, Savage would typically tell Elizabeth to stay in his dressing room, and would get angry with any of the men who attempted to approach or talk to her. This protective nature from Savage also showed itself in Elizabeth's on-screen presence. Savage managed nearly every aspect of Elizabeth's character and look, but even she needed friends who were women. That's how Elizabeth came to be friends with Linda Hogan, the then wife to WWF's megastar Hulk Hogan. As another woman who spent most of her time on the road with her husband, the two became fast
I never
friends,
heard of
and it
Plain
gave
Ralph
Elizabeth
Mills.
an outlet for socialization away from the Savage's overprotective nature.
I never looked
To
to a
be
whole lot of
clear,
wrestling lore.
nobody has ever claimed that Savage and Elizabeth's relationship was poor or toxic by any means. As an actual married couple, the two were never part of the prevalent club and party scenes like many other wrestlers were at the time, which kept them away from drugs and alcohol. There has never been any instances or stories of abuse, and by all accounts, the two loved each other very much. Their most prevalent issues as a couple were ones that many who travel and spend every moment with each other have. Elizabeth was constantly managing Savage's career behind the scenes and spent most of her time preparing Savage and his equipment for the constant matches. The only real issue was Savage's overprotection, which began to wear on Elizabeth over the years. As time went on, Savage's personality and in-ring ability forced the WWF to turn him face, and his relationship with Elizabeth became even more popular with the fans. Savage went on to win the WWF title with Elizabeth by his side at WrestleMania 4, and would eventually align with Hulk Hogan in the summer of 1988 as the Mega Powers. Despite the top two babyfaces in the company teaming together, much of the focus remained on their manager, Miss Elizabeth, and she propelled the two to new heights. Elizabeth was also the reason for the implosion of the Mega Powers, once again being the focal point of one.
Hell no, what do you mean the dark side of the ring, there was a wrestler that was a hitman for the mob during his wrestling career? You trying to get me to watch some fire? That shit sounds crazy.
One of the company's biggest storylines. Again, playing off of
What
his
the
real-life
fuck?
insecurities, Savage began to accuse Hogan of lusting after Miss Elizabeth. After a series of instances where the two hugged or Hogan accidentally laid his hands on her, coupled with a number of other
Who laid his hands on who? Hold on. Hey, one story at a time.
his biggest storylines. Again, playing off of his real-life insecurities, Savage began to accuse Hogan of lusting after Miss Elizabeth. After a series of instances where the two hugged or Hogan accidentally laid his hands on her, coupled with a number of other perceived slights, the Mega Powers exploded into the main event of WrestleMania 5. Elizabeth refused to pick sides between the two men, taking a neutral corner during the bout, and after Hogan eventually took the WWF title from Savage, the Macho Man dropped Miss Elizabeth as his manager the next night, separating the two on television for the first time. In reality, Elizabeth was just burnt out from the years on the road with her husband, and wanted the two of them to take some time off. Savage was at the height of his popularity though, and didn't want to walk away just yet, so instead, only Elizabeth took time off the road.
No, I'm gonna finish
went
seeing
through a
that video.
character change, now calling
It's all
himself
gonna lead back
the
to that video, I
Macho
promise
King,
you.
punctuated by his new manager, the sensational Sherry. The intense Sherry
gonna lie,
was
she
a
kinda
far cry
chopped
from
a
the
little bit. Shout
elegant
to
Miss
Sherry.
Elizabeth, and fans continually pleaded during the shows for the return of the First Lady of Wrestling. By the time WrestleMania 7 rolled around, a retirement match was made between him and the Ultimate Warrior. Before the match had started, Elizabeth was spotted in the crowd by the broadcast watching the contest. The Ultimate Warrior defeated Savage, and after the match, Sherry began berating and kicking the beaten Macho Man. Elizabeth then jumped the barricade, rushing the ring and threw Sherry to the outside to protect her former client. The two embraced in the ring and the crowd cheered and cried tears of joy. They left together and finally reunited on screen. To this day, Miss Elizabeth's return is one of WrestleMania's most iconic moments and helps cement the Macho Man and Miss Elizabeth as the greatest love story the WWE has ever told.
Okay.
The duo then capitalized on their WrestleMania momentum when the Macho Man proposed to Miss Elizabeth. Ironically, despite being actually married for nearly 7 years by that point, the marriage was secret from the audience. This led to the two having one of the industry's most iconic in-ring marriage ceremonies at SummerSlam 1991, dubbed the Match Made in Heaven. Then it was back to business as usual,
I've seen this
with
before.
most of Savage's storylines revolving around men interacting with Miss Elizabeth. In 1992 though, things between Elizabeth and Savage would shift forever. In real life, the Hogans had gone down to Miami due to Hulk filming the movie. Elizabeth, who had been feeling isolated without having Linda around to hang out with, asked Randy if she could go to Miami to spend a week with her friend. Randy agreed, and so Elizabeth arrived in Miami, but very quickly
I hope that she ain't meet this nigga. It always start with a fucking trip to Miami, man.
Elizabeth began to stray from staying with her friends. After not being able to find Elizabeth before going out, Linda Hogan eventually found her hanging out with another man. Elizabeth said that she was going to be staying with him instead of the Hogans during her time
Yo, that Miami trip gotta be fucking studied, my nigga.
in Miami. Savage, meanwhile, began to get concerned as his attempts to call Elizabeth continued to be unanswered. He eventually got through to Linda Hogan, and when she said she wasn't sure where Elizabeth
You
was,
lied to me.
Savage freaked out. He ended up traveling directly to Miami,
Oh, that
telling
nigga
Linda
crazy.
not to inform Elizabeth that he was looking for her.
Oh, he dead ass
After
crazy.
a few hours, Savage and Hulk Hogan found Elizabeth, and Randy ended up taking her home. The altercation was one of the final straws in Elizabeth and Randy's relationship, and Randy and
Yeah, brother, I'm gonna be honest with you. You can't fly down there to go get her ass. Because, hey, that lady knew what she was doing. That was a grown-ass woman. That ain't no kid. She knew what she, niggas say shit. Bro, you can't control no woman like that, bro. The problem is niggas start falling in love with women and then you start to treat her like she a kid. That woman is grown. Like, and what I mean by, like, say like she a kid, be like, oh, no, I got to protect her all of a sudden. No, she got to, no, she gonna do whatever the fuck she want to do. Different time. Yeah, I get you. What is this, Flash? In the 80s, crack or coke was involved too. Tough.
Hulk's relationship was even strained, as Savage blamed Hogan for letting Elizabeth go astray. Soon after, Miss Elizabeth packed her bags and left Randy Savage while he was on the road. She had grown tired of the overprotection and Savage's controlling nature, and decided to move back to Miami to be with the man she had met during her vacation. Elizabeth was quietly written off WWF television, with only a statement regarding their divorce from Randy Savage mentioned in WWF magazine. Miss Elizabeth was no longer mentioned in feuds or in any capacity, out of respect to Savage, who was said to have been devastated by Elizabeth leaving.
I think it is Tori.
Elizabeth went on to lead a quiet number of years. She retired from wrestling and in turn retired from the spotlight. She ended up meeting and dating an attorney in Miami named Carrie Lubetsky, and the two were actually married in 1997. But this wouldn't spell the end of Miss Elizabeth's career in wrestling. Randy Savage, looking to revitalize his career, jumped to WCW. At the time, WCW was giving out lucrative guaranteed contracts, with Savage in particular receiving around $1 million. Despite the two having been separated for a number
back
of
then
years,
was crazy though.
Savage reached out to Elizabeth to come to WCW with him, as a gesture to get her one of those expensive contracts. So in January of 1996, Miss Elizabeth returned from retirement, again
Hell nah, I ain't finna give you this check. I just got paid. You coming back, you looking better than ever. You fucking with niggas beside me, you can't get none of this check. I ain't gonna lie, that's the best she looked in this video. Shout out to her. Hell nah, you can't get none of this check. You left me and got finer. Fuck out of here. Hell nah.
Randy Savage.
Hell nah, you start glowing and shit.
In WCW.
Fuck no.
Things were different in this iteration though, as Miss Elizabeth turned heel for the first time in her career shortly after debuting. She aligned with the New World Order, and many of her early storylines again focused on her ex-husband in an inverse of the storylines they would tell in the WWF. This time, Elizabeth was the manipulative one, and she got to show off a side of her that audiences had never seen before. After taking a brief leave of absence, Elizabeth would return with a new client, and this would be her most important client since the Macho Man Randy Savage. Elizabeth began managing Lex Luger, another big-name superstar in WCW. Again, Elizabeth's mean streak would become more pronounced, actually getting physically involved in some matches and storylines to benefit her client. But the real story was the one happening behind the scenes. When Elizabeth was with Randy Savage, real life influenced art, with Savage's actual insecurities and jealousness inspiring most of their feuds and storylines. This time, the opposite was happening. As had happened countless times in professional wrestling, the art began to influence real life, as Elizabeth began to have a romantic relationship with Lex Luger. But the twist in the story was that both Elizabeth and Luger were married at the time. Elizabeth ended up separating from her husband in a move likely hastened by her new relationship with Luger, but Luger remained married to his wife throughout. To make matters even
Oh,
more
she
complicated,
wildin'.
Elizabeth moved to Georgia to be closer to Luger, and even lived in the same complex as Luger and his family.
Oh,
despite
she
reservations from
wildin'.
many backstage, including Elizabeth's friend Linda Hogan.
He wildin'. No way you move your side piece in the same apartments as your fucking family. They was bugging.
Most people liked Elizabeth so much that they decided that if she was happy with the relationship, then so were they, even if it did have the potential to become a messy affair. Even the Macho Man, to his credit, was never reported to have any jealousy or ill will towards Elizabeth or Luger during this time, and was actually said to have been relatively cordial and friendly with the two throughout.
I ain't gonna lie, Macho Man, I get where you coming from. After you leave me, I'm gonna get a little jealous. I ain't gonna lie. I'm like, man, I don't want to hear about you with nobody. Till I find out you fucking a married man, and I be like, oh, nah, damn. I dodged the bullet. You ain't finna have me like Zach Randolph. What my nigga Zach tweeted? Let me bring that tweet up. What an image it. I promise you, you're not finna have me going out like this after I found out what your ass was on. And what? I got to leave you alone.
Elizabeth and Luger remained an on-screen act until WCW's closing in 2000, with May 29th being Miss Elizabeth's last appearance in wrestling in her career. Elizabeth and Luger stayed together after leaving WCW, with Elizabeth going full circle by working the front desk at Luger's gym in Georgia called Main Event Fitness. But things weren't all as they seemed behind the scenes for the couple. Elizabeth and Luger began to get involved with pills and alcohol. Luger had begun to use pills for pain, believing himself to be too disciplined to actually become addicted to them. Unfortunately, his belief was false, as both he and Elizabeth developed an addiction to pills. And
No cap, just real quick about me. Bro, I don't think I'm above anything, right? So how can I say this? How a lot of people become addicted to something, they think that they can't do it. Oh, it'll never be me. It'll never be me. Nigga, I know that those drugs, the reason why people do those shits because they're good, they're addicting. They get your mind wanting those bitches, period. You think I don't think I'm going to be the nigga that do that shit, be like, oh, I'll never do it again. Fuck no. So guess what I don't do? I don't open the door to the fuck shit. I think having the mindset of thinking that you like, it'll never happen to you is like some of the craziest shit ever when it comes down to shit like that. Bro, no, nigga, like, be like, yo, that could be me, so let me not do that.
Pain, believing himself to be too disciplined to actually become addicted to them. Unfortunately, his belief was false, as both he and Elizabeth developed an addiction to pills, and commonly would mix them with alcohol in a dangerous combination. Their addiction began a mutual spiraling that only got worse as time went on. Arguments between the two began to become more frequent as the relationship began to turn toxic.
Relax, bro.
The cops were called numerous times to the townhouse the couple shared, to the point where Luger felt that he was being targeted by the Cobb County Police, as every appearance from them drew more vehicles and officers. In April of 2003, police were called to the home Luger and Elizabeth shared in response to a domestic dispute. When they arrived, they found Miss Elizabeth with 2 bruised eyes, a bump on her head, and a busted lip. Elizabeth told authorities that her injuries were a result of falling down. She told the police that she had fallen on concrete while walking their 2 large dogs, but she also told friends that she had fallen down the stairs. Eventually, she admitted that Luger had hit her. Luger was charged with misdemeanor battery and was released on $2,500 bond.
That's it?
Only 2 days later, while Miss Elizabeth was in the car with Lex Luger, he was charged with a DUI after rear-ending another car. To make matters worse, Luger had a suspended license and was driving with a gun in the car. Elizabeth, luckily, was unharmed, and she was sent home from the accident in a taxi cab. The real tragedy would take place a month later on May 1st, 2003. The two were spending the night taking a mix of hydrocodone and Xanax and washing them down with vodka. After heating up their dinner in the microwave, Luger called Elizabeth to come and get her food, but Elizabeth never did. He then took the food over to her on the couch, thinking that Elizabeth had just fallen asleep. He was unable to wake her up though, and when he finally noticed that Elizabeth's eyes were dilated, he began to realize that something was wrong. A panicked Luger called 911 to report that Elizabeth wasn't breathing and was instructed by the responder to begin CPR until paramedics could arrive. Luger delayed in starting the CPR, as he was frazzled and unaware of how to even do it, but made the attempt before paramedics made it onto the scene. Luger was escorted to the front yard while the professionals tried to save Miss Elizabeth, but it was too late. Miss Elizabeth had died at the age of 42. The police arrived at Luger's home soon after and began to treat the townhouse as a crime scene. Luger was informed by the police that he was not yet being charged with any crime, but that they had to bring him into the station while they did their investigation. Elizabeth's body was taken in for an autopsy to see if there was any signs of foul play resulting in her death. The forensic pathologist didn't find anything, and Luger was absolved from any wrongdoing resulting in Elizabeth's death. Her cause of death was officially listed as acute toxicity from a deadly mix of painkillers and vodka. Even though Lex was off the hook for the murder of Miss Elizabeth, he still faced some trouble. While investigating the home, police found a large stash of anabolic roids, Oxycontin, synthetic growth hormones, and more. As a result, Luger was charged with 13 counts of possession of a controlled substance and 1 misdemeanor count of distribution of a dangerous substance. He was arrested, and he actually missed Miss Elizabeth's funeral due to him being in jail. He would plead guilty to the drug charges and was fined $1,000 and sentenced to 5 years of probation. The misdemeanor charges stemming from
5 years of probation with all those drugs.
Dispute a month before Elizabeth's death were eventually dropped after her passing. When the news broke of Miss Elizabeth's death, details were very fuzzy, and many people rushed to the conclusion that Lex Luger had murdered Miss Elizabeth. This conspiracy has haunted Luger till this day, as he still gets fingers pointed at him for being the one who murdered Miss Elizabeth in a fit of rage. For many years, people have questioned the nature of Elizabeth's untimely demise. Much of this has stemmed from the shocking nature of her death. Elizabeth had been portrayed as an elegant, clean-living girl for nearly a decade on television, and the idea that she could die from a drug overdose was shocking to the public. As a result, some people have—
They don't know her. She looked so nice and cute on TV. She was fucking somebody's husband. They don't know that lady.
Looked towards Luger as having done something to result in the death of Miss Elizabeth, as he was the only one who was there at the time when she passed away. Although it is unlikely that Luger had a direct hand in the death of Miss Elizabeth, he cannot totally be absolved from responsibility in her demise.
I'm being honest, and it's not because of how this dude is painting this video. Obviously, we learned this on the go. I don't think he killed that lady. I think he was a piece of shit to that lady. I think he's a fucking bastard. I think he's a terrible person. I also think she fucked with that dude, and she liked that dude that much. His habits became her habits, and they both was two fucking junkies. And she passed.
Luger was the one who first began to get Elizabeth addicted to the pills that would eventually take her life, and as seen by his eventual felony charges, he had a wide array of pills that Elizabeth had.
Hell yeah, mighty! I'm already knowing wrestling fans got it.
The toxic spiral of their relationship, which featured physical abuse initiated by Luger, likely hastened Elizabeth's addiction and ultimate death. And had Luger been able to act faster or more competently when he discovered Elizabeth's state, there was a possibility that he may have been able to save her life. There's very little evidence pointing to Luger killing Miss Elizabeth directly, but the case can certainly be made that Lex Luger killed Miss Elizabeth indirectly. Luckily, Miss Elizabeth's legacy in the ring has far outweighed the tragic circumstances of her death. Rising from difficult circumstances, she became one of the most recognizable women in the entire industry. Her presence helped elevate the Macho Man to a legendary career, and the two were so intertwined that it can be argued that Randy Savage would never have become the superstar he did without the help of his wife and manager. Every person who talks about Elizabeth's time in the WWF does so with reverence, with many arguing that she should be part of the WWE Hall of Fame. Elizabeth paved the way for countless female valets after her, providing a blueprint for how a non-active member of the roster can still be a compelling character and key figure in the industry. Although Elizabeth was taken too soon as a result of addiction, the mark she left as the first lady of professional wrestling will never be forgotten. Lex Luger was accused of the murder of Miss Elizabeth, but he is not the only wrestler who has gotten accused of murder,
Reggie,
as Jake the
it
Snake
is.
Roberts' father, Grizzly Smith, was also accused of murdering his own daughter, Jolynn, because he was afraid that she would reveal how he essayed her and her siblings.
Oh,
If you'd like
you
to see the
dirty
video on
fucking
Grizzly
bitch. I hope he's burning in hell.
Smith, the predator who preyed on his own children, click the video on screen.
Watching that shit. I hope that nigga burning in hell. Don't play with no kids. Yo, moving along.
She talking about baby be cautious. I'm whipping that bitch till she nauseous. Whipping that bitch till she nauseous. She talking about baby be cautious. Straight to the parking lot. After that we proceed to the bank scene.